It wasn't supposed to be the end. No one plans for that kind of finality. There was no grand announcement and no farewell tour for the studio. It just happened. Or rather, it stopped happening. So, the last time Elvis Presley ever sang a complete song into a recording microphone wasn't in the hallowed halls of Sun Studio in Memphis, where it all began. It wasn't in RCA's legendary Studio B in Nashville, where so many hits were born. It was at home, in his house, in a room with green shag carpet and a fake waterfall. To understand why this was the last song, you have to understand the man in late 1976. The king was tired, not just sleepy, a deep, bone-level exhaustion. The world saw the jumpsuits, the karate moves, the sold-out arenas. But that was a mask, and it was getting heavy. He was living in a bubble, a gilded cage called Graceland. His world had shrunk to a few trusted friends, late-night movies, and the ever-present prescriptions that blurred the days and nights together. He was a prisoner of his own fame. Going to a recording studio had become a chore. It meant schedules, it meant expectations, it meant leaving the comfort of his home and facing the outside world. He didn't want to do it anymore. He had the power, the money, the influence to say no. So he did. But RCA, his record label, needed a new album. The contract demanded it. The fans demanded it. The whole machinery of the Elvis empire needed new product to keep moving. The solution was a compromise. If Elvis wouldn't go to the studio would come to Elvis. RCA hired a mobile recording truck. They parked it in the driveway at Graceland. They ran thick black cables through the windows and doors, snaking them down the hallway. They set up microphones and instruments in one of the most famous rooms in the house, the den. But everyone called it the Jungle Room. The Jungle Room was Elvis's private sanctuary, a monument to his unique taste. It had dark, carved wooden furniture that looked like it came from a tiki bar. A stone waterfall was built into one wall. The carpet was a deep, unruly green shag. It was the last place on earth you'd choose to make a professional record. The acoustics were a nightmare. The vibe was strange, but it was his space, it was on his terms, that was the only way it was going to happen. They had tried this once before, earlier in the year, in February 1976, and it had worked more or less. The sessions were long and chaotic. They'd start late at night and go until dawn, fueled by junk food and coffee. Elvis was in a mixed state. Sometimes he was engaged, brilliant, the old magic flashing in his eyes. He cut the powerful ballad, Hurt, during those sessions, a song that showed he could still deliver a vocal that could break your heart. He recorded Moody Blue, a contemporary track that would become a hit. The band, his loyal TCB band, was incredible. And James Burton on guitar, Ronnie Tutt on drums, the whole crew. They could turn on a dime and follow him wherever he wanted to go musically. But even then, there were signs of trouble. His focus would drift. He'd get bored and wander off. It was a struggle. But they got an album's worth of material. Now it was October. 8 months later. The truck was back in the driveway. The cables were run again. The band was set up in the Jungle Room, and things were different. Things were worse. The tour schedule had been brutal. His health had declined further. His mood was darker, more unpredictable. He was heavier, he was more withdrawn. The man who walked into the Jungle Room in October was a shadow of the man from February. The producer, Felton Jarvis, was a man under pressure. He was a longtime friend and collaborator. He loved Elvis. But he also had a job to do. RCA was breathing down his neck. He needed songs. He needed an album. And he had a star who didn't want to work. The first night of the new sessions, nothing happened. Elvis came down, hung out with the guys, but showed no interest in singing. The second night was the same. The expensive recording truck sat silent in the driveway. The world-class musicians sat in the tiki-themed den, waiting for a spark. Felton was getting desperate. The whole thing was a bust. They were spending a fortune and getting nothing. Elvis would come downstairs, maybe play the piano a little, maybe listen to some demos. But when it came time to put on the headphones and sing, he'd shy away. He wasn't feeling it. He complained his voice was scratchy. He said the songs weren't right, they were excuses. The truth was, the fire was low. The will to create, to push, to perform in that sterile, demanding way was nearly gone. They managed to record a few things. A loose version of It's Easy for You, a ballad written by Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice. His voice was beautiful on it, but frail, tired. He sang a respectable version of the old Jim Reeves classic, He'll Have to Go. But there was no energy, no joy. It was the sound of a man going through the motion. The sessions were a failure. Everyone knew it. It felt like the end of the road. On the last night, October 30th, they decided to give it one more try. The mood was bleak. Felton had one more song he wanted to push. It was an up-tempo, fun rock and roll number. It wasn't a deep, soul-searching ballad. It wasn't a gospel hymn. It was just a piece of simple, driving pop music. The writer Lang Martin Jr. had penned a hit for Reba McEntire and had a knack for catchy tunes. This song was about a love affair, with a driving rhythm and a sense of playful urgency. It had a rolling piano part and a thumping bass line. They played the demo for Elvis. Something clicked. Maybe it was the simplicity, maybe it was the energy, maybe, after days of trying to wring emotion out of slow, sad songs, he just wanted to have some fun. He stood up, he walked to the microphone, the band kicked into the intro, and suddenly he was there. The Elvis everyone was waiting for, the boredom vanished, the fatigue seemed to melt away. He was smiling, he was moving, he was into it. His voice, which had sounded so weary on the other tracks, was strong and clear. He was playing with the lyrics, bouncing off the rhythm. He was leading the band, pushing them. One of the most memorable parts of the song is a ridiculously low bass note, sung by J.D. Sumner. J.D. was the leader of the Stamps Quartet, Elvis's backup singers. He was famous for having one of the lowest voices in recorded music history. On this track, he hits a note so low, it sounds like the ground is rumbling. During the recording, when J.D. would hit that note, Elvis would crack up laughing on the mic. You could hear it on the outtakes. It was a moment of pure, unscripted joy, the kind of moment that had been missing for so long. They did a few takes, 4 to be exact. He was having a good time, he was energized. He nailed it. The final take was perfect. It was tight, professional, and full of life. It sounded like a hit. When it was over, there was a sense of relief and excitement in the room. They had done it, they had gotten one great, upbeat, commercial song in the can. It had saved the sessions from being a total disaster. And then, it was over. Elvis took off the headphones, he thanked the band, and he walked out of the room. He went upstairs, he was done. That was it. The last note had been sung. The last laugh had been recorded. The mobile truck was packed up. The musicians went home. No one in that room knew they had just witnessed the end of an era. They all assumed there would be another session, maybe in a few months, maybe back in a proper studio in Nashville when he was feeling better. There was, in fact, another session booked. In January of 1977, RCA booked time at a Nashville studio. Felton and the band flew in, ready to work. Elvis flew in too. He checked into his hotel. But he never made it to the studio. He stayed in his room sick and unwilling to sing. Or he wouldn't come out. The session was canceled. The musicians were sent home. It was the final confirmation of what the Jungle Room sessions had suggested. He couldn't do it anymore. The physical and mental effort required to create music in a studio setting was now beyond him. His creative outlet had shifted. His focus was now entirely on the live shows. On stage, in front of an adoring crowd, he could still summon the energy. The love from the audience fed him, sustained him. It was a different kind of performance. It was about presence, charisma, and running through the hits. It wasn't about the delicate, repetitive, and often frustrating work of building a song from scratch in a studio. That part of his life was over. He just hadn't announced it. So why was this the last song? It wasn't a choice. It was a consequence. A consequence of his declining health, his deepening isolation, and his profound burnout. He didn't quit recording. Recording left him. The process became too difficult, too demanding. The Jungle Room sessions were the last gasp, an attempt to work around his limitations. And that one final, energetic song was a fluke, a miracle, a brief moment where the clouds parted and the sun shone through. It was a flash of the old rock and roller, the boy who changed the world, hiding inside the tired, ailing superstar. The song was released as a single in the summer of 1977. It was a hit, it started climbing the charts in America and the UK. It was catchy, it was fun, and it was Elvis. People loved it. And as the song was rising, Elvis was fading. On August 16th, 1977, he died. The news shocked the world. And his last single, that fun, simple rock and roll song recorded in his living room, suddenly took on a new meaning. It became his final statement. It shot to #1 in many countries. It was the sound of his voice on the radio as the world mourned his passing. The cruel irony was that the song itself is about things going down, a lover leaving, the end of a good time. The lyrics seem to echo the tragedy of his own end. It is a strange capstone to such an incredible recording career. His last studio vocal wasn't a profound statement like Johnny Cash's version of Hurt. It wasn't a grand sweeping ballad, it was a piece of rock and roll candy, but in a way that makes it more poignant. It proves that even at the very end, when he was struggling so profoundly, the instinct was still there. The love for a good beat, a rolling piano, and a song that made you want to move was still buried inside him. The reason it was the last song he ever sang in a recording studio is because he was too sick and tired to ever do it again. It was the last spark from a dying fire. A final, defiant, joyful noise made against the encroaching silence. A moment of pure Elvis, captured on tape just before the curtain fell for good. The song was Way Down.